I had thought I understood interstellar diplomacy, or at least the bare minimum. Don't insult alien leaders, don't touch their technology without permission, and absolutely, under no circumstances, comment on physical appearances. Naturally, I broke all three rules before breakfast. The alien warrior emerged from the corridor like a storm contained in humanoid form, her long ears twitching in precise, deliberate movements as if attuned to some secret rhythm of the ship itself. She was striking, impossibly so tall, lithe, with a presence that made even the blinking consoles seem timid. And in a moment that would haunt my judgment forever, I muttered, entirely too casually, "You have a nice." And then, because humans are incapable of finishing things gracefully under pressure, back. Her ears shot forward like twin blades, and her eyes, sharp and glimmering with violet flecks, locked onto me with the force of a gravitational pull. Time slowed, the fluorescent lights flickered, and I realized that in the hierarchy of mistakes, I had just vaulted into a stratosphere of catastrophic errors. "You what?" Her voice was low, controlled, but the intensity behind it made the air between us almost solid. I meant, not, that I waved my hands uselessly. It was a compliment, a human compliment. "Please don't kill me." Her lips curved, not in amusement but in a thin line of deliberate menace. "You speak with such carelessness, yet your observation is noted. You are now my prisoner." I blinked, prisoner, for one poorly phrased compliment. Her ears twitched forward sharply. For violation of protocol, insult to authority, and failure to demonstrate basic observational discretion. Your sentence is immediate detention. Before I could formulate a more reasonable defense, she moved with fluid precision, and the next thing I knew, I was seated in what could only be described as a containment module, sleek walls humming with energy barriers that gently restrained me without causing harm. I could see her across the room, standing perfectly still, watching, ears flicking occasionally, a predator assessing its prey with clinical exactitude. "So, I began, trying to lighten the situation with humor. "This is a misunderstanding, right? We can talk about it, maybe over a cup of something hot, coffee, tea, whatever you humans or aliens drink." She tilted her head, a subtle quirk that made her long ears sway like delicate instruments. "Your humor is noted. Amusing in a fragile human way. It will not alter your status." I sighed, leaning back against the containment wall. "Fragile, noted. Status unchanged, noted. Great. We're off to a fantastic start, huh?" Her attention didn't waver. "You will comply with instructions. You will learn our customs. You will observe and report. Resistance will not be tolerated, but I sense potential." "Potential," I echoed, incredulous. "You just threw me in prison for a compliment, and now you're talking about potential." Her lips curved almost imperceptibly, and the flicker in her eyes suggested amusement, or perhaps calculation. "Potential for adaptation, survival, engagement, even understanding. It is rare for your species to demonstrate all three under such conditions." I blinked at her, processing the statement. "So basically I'm a lab rat, with style points." Her ears flicked sharply in a movement that could only be read as approval or at least acknowledgement. "Perhaps a test subject. Yet the conditions are real and your choices matter. You will see consequences and you will learn." As hours passed, or what I assumed were hours, time aboard the station had an elastic quality. The alien warrior guided me through a series of trials that tested observation, reflexes, and cultural understanding. Each task was framed as a punishment, but often ended in subtle humor. A console that spat confounding error messages until I mimicked her own precise hand movements, or a gravity simulator that required balance I didn't know I had. She watched constantly, her long ears and expressive gestures conveying approval or disapproval in ways that were at once alien and intuitive. "Careful with the conduit," she said at one point, her voice calm, almost casual, but her ears twitched like antennae tuned to every vibration in the room. Precision will prevent disaster. Disaster prevention is my specialty, I quipped, nearly tripping over the conduit anyway. A small twitch at the corner of her lips, an almost imperceptible acknowledgement, made me realize she had a sense of humor, even if it was sharp and lethal in undertones. You persist in folly, she observed, and yet there is engagement. You are more interesting than expected. I swallowed, simultaneously terrified and oddly flattered. Interesting, yes. Terrified also, yes. Happy to provide entertainment while learning your customs. She regarded me silently for a moment, ears flicking in subtle approval. Entertainment is secondary. Survival, understanding, adaptation, these are primary. You may yet survive, and perhaps learn something about yourself. The containment module hummed softly around me, lights reflecting off the sleek walls, and I realized that the alien warrior's wrath, while fearsome, was only the beginning of a strange, intricate relationship. She was teaching, testing, observing, and in her own way inviting me into a world I didn't understand, yet felt compelled to navigate. So, I said, voice cautiously optimistic, I guess this is the start of a rather intense cultural exchange program. Her eyes glimmered, ears flicking forward with a subtle rhythm I was beginning to interpret as approval. A program, yes, but one where your failures are instructive and your choices consequential. Welcome, human. You are under my charge. Learn quickly. And as she turned away, leaving me to contemplate my new reality, I understood that surviving her scrutiny would require wit, courage, and an awareness I had never needed before, and that even in captivity, I might find connection, understanding, and the faintest trace of camaraderie with the alien warrior who had taken me prisoner over a careless compliment. The following cycle of life aboard the alien outpost was nothing like I expected. The containment module no longer felt entirely like a prison. It was a classroom, a proving ground, and occasionally a comedy of errors. Celira, the alien warrior with ears like twin radar dishes and a glare that could slice through steel, had a habit of turning even the most mundane task into a test of wit, adaptability, and nerve. Human, she said one morning, or what passed for morning under the undulating light of the station's artificial sun, you will perform maintenance on the gravimetric stabilizers. Failure is not ideal. I stared at the consoles, blinking at the intricate patterns of pulsing energy streams. Failure, noted. Not ideal, understood. But you do realize I almost blew up the oxygen recycler yesterday trying to organize the screwdrivers in order of, aesthetic alignment. Her ears twitched sharply, and I had begun to recognize that motion as a precise blend of irritation and amusement. Your humor persists, yet you adapt. This is encouraging. I grinned sheepishly. Encouraging, yes, also terrifying. But mostly encouraging, I think. The stabilizers were more complex than any Earth engineering I'd encountered. A mesh of quantum conduits, nanofluidic circuits, and energy harmonics that pulsed with a rhythm almost musical. As I struggled to make sense of the interface, Celira circled me, her long ears tilting like sensitive instruments, eyes tracking every twitch of my hands. You interpret patterns slowly, she observed. Yet you notice anomalies that are unexpected. This is unusual for humans. Slow, yes, but I get there eventually, I said, twisting a conduit connector that sparked lightly and made me jump. Sometimes the unexpected ones are the fun ones, though. Her eyes glimmered faintly with an almost imperceptible spark of amusement. Fun is subjective, precision is objective, yet your persistence is notable. As the hours passed, she continued to test me with challenges that alternated between near-impossible technical tasks and absurd exercises that seemed designed to probe my reactions. A zero-gravity chamber, for example, where I had to catch floating energy spheres with exact timing, or a holographic simulation that presented cultural puzzles I could barely parse. Each time I stumbled, she would issue a correction with her trademark precision. yet sometimes her correction was a subtle joke, a riddle, or a gesture that made me laugh despite myself. "You are remarkably resilient," she said after I had successfully rerouted the energy conduits for the fourth time, accidentally spilling a small reservoir of luminescent coolant over the floor. "And remarkably foolish. Yet resilience is commendable." I wiped my hands on a sleeve that didn't exist. Apparently, the coolant had a way of evaporating before touching matter. Foolish, yes. Resilient also, yes. Commendable, hopefully. Learning curve steep, but at least the view is nice. Her lips twitched in what I had come to recognize as the alien equivalent of a smile. You find levity in circumstances that would paralyze others. That is beneficial. Yet heed caution. Humor will not always suffice. By the third cycle of our unconventional schooling, I began to notice subtle shifts in her behavior. She no longer regarded me solely as a prisoner to be tested. Her glances held a trace of consideration, and her corrections, though still precise, carried a nuanced tone. There were moments where she allowed me to experiment, to make mistakes without immediate reprimand, and when I succeeded, even slightly, her approval flickered in her eyes and ears. "You anticipate my movements," she noted as I completed a particularly tricky alignment of energy fields. "Adaptation is occurring. You are learning more rapidly than expected." "Learning rapidly," I echoed. "Or maybe I'm just getting good at guessing what you want. Either way, progress." She tilted her head, the long ears swaying like twin pendulums. "Observation and adaptation, yes, but your humor persists. That is unexpected, yet it has value." I laughed softly, feeling a flicker of pride. "Unexpected value, that's my specialty. Works for everything from fixing plasma conduits to surviving alien wrath." Evenings, or the periods designated as such, were quieter, moments when the outpost hum softened and the distant stars cast slow-moving shadows across the decks. In those times, she would allow me to rest, or sometimes simply to observe her, and I began to see glimpses of her beyond the warrior's persona. Subtle gestures, the way her ears twitched when thinking, the occasional soft exhalation that suggested reflection rather than command. "You question," she said once, her voice softer, almost conversational. "You inquire beyond instruction. Curiosity is noted, it is rare." "Curiosity," I replied, leaning against a console with a wry grin. "Survival requires curiosity, and also luck, mostly luck though." Her eyes glimmered faintly in the low light, ears angling forward. "Luck is unreliable, yet your humor and curiosity allow observation and learning. You are adapting." And in that moment, I realized that the bond forming between us was no longer merely prisoner and captor, teacher and student. It was a complex, evolving connection that mixed respect, humor, challenge, and subtle trust. My mistakes were met with correction, but also with patience. My humor was tolerated and even subtly encouraged. I had begun to understand her culture, her values, and her way of blending strict discipline with unexpected levity. "You have survived more than expected," she said as a final test for the cycle concluded, ears twitching in rhythm with her quiet amusement. "And in doing so, you have earned consideration. This is rare." I exhaled, feeling a surge of relief and something stranger, pride. "Consideration. I like that. I'll even try not to ruin it tomorrow." Her ears flicked with subtle approval, and I realized that surviving her wrath was no longer merely about following orders. It was about understanding her, anticipating her, and learning to navigate a relationship that was equal parts challenge, danger, and something I couldn't yet name. The outpost hummed around us, a galaxy of activity and energy flowing beyond the observation ports, and I understood that the next cycle would be just as demanding, just as unpredictable, and just as revealing. In the trials ahead, I would continue to learn, adapt, and perhaps, in time, earn not only her respect but a measure of connection that transcended the walls of my containment. And somehow, amidst the alarms, the glowing conduits, and the relentless tests, I couldn't help but look forward to it. The alarms sounded, shrill and urgent, slicing through the low hum of the alien outpost like a blade of pure frequency. I bolted upright on the observation deck, heart hammering, as red emergency lights painted everything in frantic crimson. Celira appeared beside me without a sound, her long ears twitching sharply, eyes narrowing at the holographic display before her. "External breach detected," she said, voice calm but tight with controlled tension. "A cargo vessel collided with the defense grid. Containment fields destabilizing. You," she flicked a precise gesture toward me, "assist or perish." Assist or perish. Charming. I grabbed a console, trying to keep my panic contained while my fingers flailed over controls I barely understood but had grown to trust through hours of ridiculous drills, lessons, and improbable exercises. "You're surprisingly competent," she muttered almost as an aside, "for a human who started as you." Her ears flicked, betraying a trace of her amusement. "Competent is my middle name," I said, half in jest, fully aware it was. "Well, technically it's never mind details. Let's save the station first, ego later." The breach wasn't subtle. Energy arcs leaped across the cargo bay like lightning caged in metal, and if the containment grids failed completely, the explosion could rip a hole in the station's hull. I had never felt so acutely that all the absurd training, the awkward cultural lessons, and even my earlier blunders had prepared me for this moment. "Align the auxiliary conduits with my vector calculations," Celira commanded, moving with the fluid precision I had come to anticipate. "Time is nonlinear, and failure is immediate." I mimicked her gestures, rerouting energy streams, holding my breath as conduits sparked and pulsed with unstable force. I remembered the lessons she had hammered into me. Precision, observation, patience, and the odd humor that kept me from freezing in fear. "Okay," I muttered, "focus, focus. Don't blow anything up, please, or at least not us." Her lips twitched in what I recognized now as her version of a grin. "Your humor persists. It is useful. We work together, a perfect but improbable team." Her mastery of energy patterns and my instinctive improvisation, honed by hours of trial, failure, and lessons disguised as punishment. Sparks flew, conduits hissed, and for a moment I thought the breach would claim the station. But then, guided by her instructions and my growing confidence, the grid stabilized. The energy arcs retracted, the lights steadied, and the alarms dimmed to a low warning hum. "You survived," she said quietly, ears flicking forward. "And more than that, you adapted." I slumped against a console, exhausted but exhilarated. "Adapted, huh? Sounds like progress. I might even get a gold star, or whatever your alien version of a sticker is." Her eyes glimmered, a soft light reflecting off the control panels. "Gold stars are trivial. Respect and capability, these are harder to earn. You have earned both." The words, though precise and measured, struck me. I had arrived as a bumbling human, ignorant of protocol, culture, and the sheer ferocity of Celira. And now, after tests, drills, blunders, lessons, and laughter, I had not only survived, I had grown. I had learned to anticipate, to observe, to act with both caution and creativity, and most unexpectedly, to connect with her across the vast chasm of species and perspective. She turned from the console, ears flicking in a motion that conveyed approval, curiosity, and perhaps something more subtle, an acknowledgement that our dynamic had shifted. "You are no longer merely a human under my supervision. You are competent, aware, and engaging. You persist where others fail." I laughed softly, catching my breath. "Engaging, huh? That's a new one, I'll take it. Maybe next time I can also try remarkably not catastrophic." Her ears twitched, a subtle vibration that I had learned to interpret as amusement. "Remarkable. In your species, humor often masks fear. In you, it also masks insight. You understand more than expected. Perhaps more than you understand yourself." I blinked at her, realizing she had seen through me. through my sarcasm, my flippancy, my panicked improvisation, and had recognized the core of who I had become. Resourceful, adaptable, and unafraid to face consequences with determination and even levity. "Looks like I owe you an apology," I said softly, the memory of my disastrous compliment surfacing. "And thanks for, not killing me immediately." She studied me, eyes sharp but not hostile. Apology unnecessary, threat irrelevant. What mattered was your response, adaptation, and willingness to engage beyond the obvious. You survived, yes, but more importantly, you grew. I exhaled, a smile tugging at my lips. Grew, huh? That's kind of nice. I like that version of me. Maybe next mission I'll manage to insult fewer people, or at least fewer powerful alien warriors. Celira's ears twitched in a motion that was unmistakably a nod. Your humor persists. It softens tension. You are more human than expected, yet capable of more than expected. You are ready. And in that moment, as the stars spun silently outside the observation windows and the hum of the stabilized outpost filled the room, I realized how much I had